Hi everyone, I'm Polly and this is Every Trick on the Hook. In this video tutorial, I am going to show you how to put a basic moss stitch border onto some joined crochet squares. So I just have a little sample here of 4 joined crochet squares that we'll be working around, and we're going to put a moss stitch border on these. So the first thing I want you to know is that I'm going to use a size 6mm or a J, that's a US J hook. I used a 5.5mm to make these squares, so I'm going up one size, or I'm going up 0.5 millimeter in my hook size to make my border. So you're probably going to want to use a hook size one size bigger than whatever you used to join or make your squares. I'm using Aran weight yarn with this. Here's my sample yarn I'll be using to make this. Now the other thing I want you to know is your stitch count that you should start with. Most of the time for a border you're going to have a very specific stitch count that you should start with, like you want multiples of 5 or you want multiples of 3 plus 1. We don't need to worry about that at all with this border. I actually have a really easy way that you can cheat. I do recommend that you count your stitches on each side just to make sure that they're the same. Now what I have here is I actually made an error in this pink square and I'm missing one stitch on this side, and I was going to fix it and then I decided I would leave it, and I left it because it changes my stitch count on this side, so I can demonstrate to you 2 different versions. Typically for moss stitch you want to start with an odd number of stitches, so any odd number, it doesn't really matter, so that's because moss stitch works every other stitch, so an odd number of stitches is ideal, but I have a very easy way that we can work around that. So on this side of our square I'm actually going to have an even number, and that way I can show you how to compensate for an even number of stitches. It's a quick little cheat, it's really simple, and it just makes things easier so you don't have to worry about your stitch counts too much. So we're going to get started. Let me find my starting yarn. Here it is. Okay, what we're going to do to begin is just put a basic round of single crochet on this. Now depending on the project that you have, if you have some joined squares, you're going to want to make sure and put a base of single crochet on before you start your moss stitch. If you have something that already has a base round on it, or maybe you've worked in the round all the way and you haven't joined anything, and now you're just putting a border on one big piece, you might not need to put this single crochet base round on. So depending on where you're at with your project, you can decide. My project obviously needs a base round, so I'm going to start in this corner right here. So I'm going to start in the corner, chain 2 space, and I'm going to make a single crochet, chain 2, and another single crochet in the corner. And then I'm just going to work single crochets in each stitch across the side. When I get to my join, I'm not going to worry about stitch counts because, again, like I explained, this border works with an odd number or an even number of stitches, so it doesn't really matter what my stitch count is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place some stitches in here that I know are placed well so that they're evenly spaced, and there's not too many stitches crammed in there and there's not too few stitches that they're stretching. So I'm going to place one in the chain 2 space of the corner. I'm going to place one sort of in the join, so it's kind of centered over my join. I'm going to place one right in the next chain 2 space of the corner, and then I'm just going to continue along. So I'm comfortable with this join that I know exactly where I want my stitches placed. So however many you find for whatever join you used, however many you find is comfortable, you just don't want them too tight and you don't want them too spread out. So however many fit in there well, just make sure every join is the same, that way your stitch counts will be the same. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and put a round of single crochet all the way around these sample squares, and then I will meet you back here in a few moments and show you how to do the second round of our moss stitch border. So I've done a full round of single crochet all the way around, and I'm back at the beginning. I wanted to show you how to join because this is actually how you're going to join throughout the entire pattern. To join around, you'll slip stitch to the very first single crochet you made, and then slip stitch into the chain 2 corner. So every round you'll just scooch over one into the corner by slip stitching into the chain 2 corner. Okay, so now let's start our moss stitch. This is really simple. We're going to chain 1 to start our round, and then single crochet in the corner chain 2 space, chain 2, and single crochet again in that corner chain 2 space. Now all we need to do is chain 1, skip the next stitch, which is the first stitch of the side, skip that stitch, and single crochet in the next stitch. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next stitch after that. All the way across, chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the stitch after that. So we're just going to do this all the way across, skipping the next stitch, single crocheting in the stitch after that one. And we'll just work this all the way across, and then I'll show you the trick for getting your stitch counts right. Like I said, moss stitch works best with an odd number of stitches. If you don't have an odd number of stitches, there's an easy way to account for it. Okay, so if you have an odd number of stitches on one side, you'll end up single crocheting in the second to last stitch. You'll chain 1, and then that last stitch of the side you'll skip, and you'll go straight into the corner and make a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the corner. Now here's my side where I skipped a stitch, or I actually missed a stitch early on, and I made a mistake, so I'm going to compensate for it here. So I'm going to work across this side so I can show you where you'll compensate for it. So you'll just work across the side like normal, pretending nothing's wrong. Let me get some more yarn going here. You might not even know that you missed a stitch. You should count your stitches before you start, but you know, sometimes things happen, you're off by one, you don't realize it until you get there. Alright, so here I am at the end of my square. I've single crocheted in the third to last stitch of the side. I chain 1. If I skip the next stitch, my next single crochet goes in the last stitch of the side, and then I don't have one to skip before my corner like I did over here. So what you do is really simple. Just chain 1 and don't skip a stitch. You don't have a stitch to skip here, so just chain 1 and then go right into your corner. Make your single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in your corner, just like that, and this will blend right in. Yeah, there's not a stitch skipped there, so it is a little bit off, but it's a really easy way to either fix maybe what could be a huge frogging event where you have to rip out a ton of stitches because I missed this stitch back here and now my counts are off, and I can either rip it all out and undo it and then start over again to get my counts right, or I can just do this little fix and it's really simple. Or maybe I have an even number of stitches on all of my sides and it might be kind of a pain to try and fix this. You might want to skip the first stitch of the side, but that actually leads to some twisting that isn't very good for moss stitch. I find this is a lot better for moss stitch than trying to skip a stitch somewhere in the side or trying to add one in. This is the perfect place to sneak in an extra stitch. So if you have an odd number of stitches, you'll just, I'll show you again, you'll end with a single crochet in the last stitch of the side. You have no stitch to skip, so you don't worry about it. Just chain 1 and then make your corner. Single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in the corner, and then just carry on with your next side. and it will be like nothing. You won't ever notice that again. So that's a quick and easy way to fix a stitch count. So go ahead and make this moss stitch on the next 2 sides, and then you'll join just like I showed you with a slip stitch to the first single crochet, and then slip stitch into the chain 2 space of the corner, and then we'll do one more round of moss stitch, and then you'll have the idea, and I will send you on your way for making your own moss stitch border. So here I am, I've gone all the way around with round 2, and I wanted to show you the join one more time. I've made my chain 1 and I'm skipping my very last stitch. I'm going to slip stitch into the top 2 loops of my first single crochet, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the corner chain 2 space. And that finishes off my round 2. Now I can start with round 3. And ultimately round 3 is exactly the same as round 2, but we don't have to pay quite as much attention to which stitches we're skipping. I'll show you why. We're going to start with a chain 1, and we'll make our corner like before with a single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet, all in that corner chain 2 space. Now what we're going to do is the same thing pretty much. This is moss stitch. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Just go ahead and do that all the way across. It's really simple. It works up really quickly. And when you get to the end of your side, you should have, one second. When you get to the end of the side, you'll have one last stitch to skip. Here we go. So here I am, I've worked into the last chain 1 space. I'm going to chain 1, skip that last stitch, and make another corner. Single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in the corner. So that's it. That is how you do moss stitch. So you would just repeat that all the way around your square, all 4 sides. Do the join just like I showed you at the beginning of this round, before we started this round. Do your join just like that, and then keep going. You can put as many or as few rounds of moss stitch on as you like. I like a nice big wide border. I do about 11 rounds. So I put my base round on. I like about 11 rounds and then a round of basic single crochet. I find that's a nice balance right about there. You can put as many on as you like or as few on as you like, but that is a nice basic moss stitch round, and just go crazy. It's great TV watching crochet, something you can do really simply without having to think too hard. Now before I send you on your way, there's one last thing I wanted to show you. So I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3 rounds of moss stitch on here now. It's not really that many, but you know, it looks nice for this size project. It's enough. If you're doing a bigger project, I would do a lot more than this. But let's just say I've put all the rounds of moss stitch on that I want, and now I want to finish up. I would just finish with a single crochet border. Just a simple single crochet border. And what's nice is after you put a round of single crochet on this, if you want to put a fancy edge on something frilly or pom-poms or shells, you can do that because you have a nice flat base to start with. So what I've done here is, let's see, here's my last round and my last chain and my last skip stitch. I'm going to slip stitch to the first single crochet to join, and you don't really need to slip stitch into the corner chain 2 space. You can start right here with a chain 1 and just single crochet in that same stitch as your join, and then you can make your single crochet corner, single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in the corner. I like that in the corner. If you want, you can do 3 single crochets if you want something more solid right there. That works too. If you're going to put a frilly edge on, I would use the single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, because that gives you a nice space for your corner. If you're going to leave it a plain round of single crochet and call it a day, that's it, you're done. I would try 3 single crochets. It looks really nice. It's a little rounded. Either one works fine. Whatever you want to do. Okay, so then all we need to do is single crochet in each stitch, so you don't skip any stitches. Single crochet in each single crochet and each chain one space, and just work that all the way around like a plain round of single crochet, nothing special, and that finishes up your moss stitch nicely. So I'm not going to show you all of those, but you get the idea. You just single crochet in each stitch and chain one space, and that's it. That's your round of single crochet to finish, and that is how you make a moss stitch border. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video tutorial helpful. I hope you'll check out my other video tutorials on my YouTube channel. Have fun crocheting, and I will see you next time.